Please, everybody stand if you would. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll follow that up by the Republican Creed, and I have it right here. I'll read it to us. This is our Republican Creed, and follow me along. If you want to repeat it, please do so. I do not choose to be a common man. It is my right to be uncommon. If I can seek opportunity, not security, I want to take the calculated risk to dream and build, to fail and to succeed. I refuse to barter incentive for dole. I prefer the challenges of life to guaranteed security, the thrill of fulfillment, to the stale calm of utopia. I will not trade freedom for benevolence, nor my dignity for a handout. I will never cower before any master save my God. It is my heritage to stand erect, proud and unafraid, to think and to act for myself, enjoy the benefit of my creations, to face the whole world boldly and say, I am a free American. Everybody take a seat. We're very fortunate here tonight to have Fred West, who's a candidate for the Commissioner of Agriculture, to bring a message to us tonight. And I'm very grateful that you take your valuable time to do so. So at this time, we'll turn the floor over to Fred.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity. When Ferd invited us to come and said he wanted me to speak for 2 hours, I thought, wow, that's a lot of time today on a Tuesday night. But really, very thankful to be here. Ferd and I have gotten to know each other a little bit since I started running. We were down in Horry County for a meeting down there. And I really appreciate the chance to come speak. Again, I'm a candidate for the Commissioner of Agriculture. Just a little, I thought I'd do this kind of in buckets. A little bit about me, a little bit about the Department of Agriculture, because a lot of people don't know what the department really does. And then the last thing would be the bucket of if I were blessed enough to be commissioner, what I would do. So I'll just start off with me. South Carolina native, been here my whole life. Lifelong conservative. Grew up in what I would call a very challenged family situation. As a kid and a teenager, I know what it was like to be hungry, and what it was like to not know where I was going to put my head. And I was lucky enough to get into USC. Probably shouldn't have gotten in there, but I was lucky enough to get into USC and focused on a business administration degree. And I knew in that time frame that I wanted to do things different than the way I was growing up. So I met my wife, Michelle. Michelle's with me today. We've been married for 36 years. She's been my friend, she's been my partner, and she's been my lifelong driving instructor. Everywhere I go, she's telling me how to drive. So it's nice to have her in the car to keep me out of trouble.
Most of us that are married have one of those.
We have 2 kids. I have one son who is finishing up his medical residency in Oxford, Mississippi, Baptist Hospital there. He's going to come this way to the East Coast. And then my daughter lives in Charleston. She got her graduate degree in psychology, and she works for the American Psychological Association. Go to a Rivercrest Presbyterian Church, where I'm an elder. It's a smaller church, probably 250 people, and we actually picked this church because it was really about our kids' age. Since our kids aren't at home, we wanted to kind of be the old people in church. We had old people in church, and we were going there, and young. We wanted to be the old people in church. So a lot of our folks are younger, having kids, all the things that drive you to drinking. Is kind of what I see. So, live in Batesburg, Leesville, South Carolina, which is just outside of Columbia. So you have Columbia, Lexington, and Batesburg, Leesville. Career-wise, got out of USC, had a business administration degree, primarily focused on human resources for my first 2 jobs. The first job was an IT consulting company where I did a lot of recruiting. The second job was working for Ryan's Family Steakhouses, which was they had almost 400 restaurants, 30,000 employees. I handled HR for the Southeast for probably 7 or 8 years. In 1999, I had a buddy call me and say, I want you to go talk to these people at Amick Farms. And I said, well, what is Amick Farms? And they said, well, it's a poultry processing company. And I said, I'm not working for a chicken plant. And he said, just go talk to them, just go talk to them. So at that time, the Amick family owned the business. And I remember after a few meetings kind of leaving and getting home and telling Michelle, I said, look, I think I'm supposed to take this job. I may get fired in a couple of weeks, but I think I'm supposed to take this job. It was VP of HR for them. And that was really where, and I say this because I think it's important to show what ag can do. I was not blessed to be born into an agricultural family. I didn't grow up on a farm. I didn't have a farm. I didn't have that early in life. But in 1999, when I went to work for the Amick family, I became part of that agricultural community. You know, agribusiness in our state is the #1 industry, so we're $52 billion a year impact on our state. And agriculture is one of the oddest, weirdest industries you can kind of get involved in, because as a guy coming out of USC, didn't come from a good family. I don't know that I was that smart, but I knew how to work. And I wanted to work hard and I wanted to learn. And agribusiness, Amick Farms specifically, gave me an opportunity to really learn and grow. So Amick Farms is a larger poultry processing company. So they raise the birds, they grow them to a certain size, they bring them to the plant, they lovingly kill them and take them apart. And we send it all over the world. So we had a plant there in Batesburg. Through my time there, over 24 years, I did everything from HR, took on safety, information technology, so the IT department, engineering, permitting, regulatory affairs, food safety. For a time, I ran the processing plants and the live operation. I was actually part of the team that when we went to go look at acquiring other companies, I was on that acquisition team. And through the years, so that 24-year period, when I first went to work at Amick Farms, we were 600 people, one shift. When I left, we were about 3,500 people. We had 3 plants, one in South Carolina, one in Maryland, one in Mississippi, and we processed about 4 million birds a week. That again was sent all over the country and all over the world. So it was just a wonderful opportunity. And I knew what had been done for me, because again, I didn't come from a great background. I knew when I was given the opportunity to retire, which again was another blessing to be able to retire early, I knew I wanted to give back to agriculture. It's been too good to me. It afforded me an opportunity to take care of my wife, take care of my kids, and learn and grow and do well, and it was something I wanted to give back. When I retired a couple of years ago, I was doing a little bit of consulting, and the current Commissioner of Agriculture, Hugh Weathers, is not seeking re-election. So he's been our Commissioner of Agriculture for 22 years. He's the longest serving commissioner in the nation. He has a mess of grandbabies that he wants to spend some time with. He and I were friends from the time he was appointed, and he kind of began to poke a little bit and get me thinking about what I could do to give back, and he wanted me to think about running. And we sat down, prayed about it, thought about it, slept on it, maybe even drank about it, I'm not sure. But we decided in January to jump in. So since January, we've really kind of been full board jumping in, really kind of getting out and meeting folks. It's really kind of been exciting to see. I'm also doing, when I was in that phase of consulting, he had asked me to come down to the department and do a few things for the department, so it kind of gave me an insider view of what was going on. I kind of quit doing some of the consulting stuff, and right now I'm the Director of Market Development within the Department of Agriculture, so it kind of gives me a bird's eye view of really what the department does. So I want to kind of shift gears and talk a little bit about the department, because this is where I think a lot of people just don't realize. So a little bit of history. 1879 was when the department was formed. It was after the Civil War. The economy was just horrible. The land was in poor condition. Nobody knew what really to do, so the General Assembly, in their great wisdom, decided to create the Department of Agriculture. And there were 2 main things they wanted the department to focus on. The first thing was to serve and support farmers in our state, which we do that today. The second thing, and I think this is interesting to think all the way back to 1879, they wanted the department to market South Carolina products. They wanted there to be a marketing push, a way to kind of increase our local production within the agribusiness sector. So even today, you still see that. We are there for servicing and supporting farmers across this state. That's one thing we do and try to do well. The other piece is that marketing piece. To this day, we still push products from South Carolina. This last week, I was in California working on that very thing, trying to connect our farmers with places that use produce in the retail segment. A couple other things the department does that, again, doesn't necessarily make sense to a certain degree, but it is kind of interesting to see the breadth and depth of the department itself. So we actually have a metrology lab. So it's not meteorology, but it's metrology. And what that means is we actually verify scales in the state. And that can be truck scales, That could be scales that sled. So for example, when they bring in drugs and they want to weigh them, they want those to be absolutely perfect at what they're doing. So we have a whole lab in Columbia that can do that. We actually go to grocery stores and verify their scales. So when you go to a grocery store and you buy tray pack chicken or tray pack whatever, it's got a label on it that they printed. We make sure that if it says 2 pounds, that it's 2 pounds. Again, it's a consumer protection kind of arm of the Department of Ag. We actually, so USDA federal inspectors handle food processing for large facilities. Like when I worked for Amick Farms, because we were so big, we had federal inspectors in the plant at all times to make sure we're doing things properly. When you get to mid-size and smaller operation, the state actually does that function. So we actually have USDA qualified inspectors, they're state employees, but they handle, for example, the inspection of quail. There's a quail plant just outside of Columbia. There's some meat processing plants, there's some food plants that we kind of inspect. If you look at your gas pump, so if next time you go on your gas pump, look on the gas pump, it says South Carolina Department of Agriculture. People say, well, what do y'all do? There's 3 basic things we do. Number 1, we make sure that what that pump says it pumped, it pumped. So if it says a gallon, we want to make sure it's a gallon. The interesting thing is 99% of your providers of gasoline in our state, because our system, in my opinion, is so good, you actually get more than a gallon. They'd rather be on the side of too much than too little, because too little is a problem. So we make sure that a gallon is a gallon. We make sure that the octane is proper. So if you got 90, if you're paying for 93, we want to make sure you get 93. And then the last thing, we look at the quality of the gasoline to make sure there's nothing in it like water, oil, and sometimes you'll even get situations where something happened to the tank and people are having a problem with their cars, and we'll go out and work with that provider to make sure things are right. We actually took over a couple years ago DHEC. So DHEC was a big, massive agency that did everything from nuclear power plants to elevators. The General Assembly kind of broke it up and gave pieces and parts, and what they gave Department of Agriculture was the restaurant inspection. So we inspect 24,000 restaurants in the state. That's restaurants, that's cafeterias in school, that's some of your smaller food trucks. We're responsible for that. So you can see a pretty broad responsibility. It's not just farming and marketing. You've got all these other things that go along with it. And what it reminds me of what being a vice president at Amick Farms was like. You had to be really good at switching gears from one silo to another silo and understanding what they needed and how to help them. But at some point, you had to make sure you bring all those things back together for the betterment of the organization itself. And that's kind of what has driven me to this, and kind of what I think, the reason why I think I kind of fit this role. If I think about what I would want to do as a Commissioner of Agriculture, if I'm blessed to be able to do that, there's really 4 buckets. I think the first one would be to continue to put South Carolina farmers first. Right now, if you look at what farmers are going through with input costs, tariffs, export, Mother Nature, markets are really kind of in a state of nothing's consistent right now. They're having a very, very difficult time. This is a time that I would tell you, I think some farmers are very, very much that close to saying, I can't.
$3 corn and $9 soybeans is going to kill a lot of farmers.
Right. When you factor that in with the input costs, that everything's up.
Yeah.
So all their fertilizer, all their herbicide, everything they use, all their equipment, everything's more. So I think we've got to find ways to put South Carolina farmers first. Now, what does that mean? It sounds like a really good Facebook quote, right? Put farmers first. I think one is we've got several functions within the state government that I think need to be brought back together well. One would be we have an ag commission. It's a group of leaders within the farming and agribusiness community that come together to try to help make decisions about what really helps us farmers. We have commodity boards. So we have a corn board, a soybean board, a cotton board. And I think one of the things that helps, because agribusiness is so diverse. If you go from chicken all the way over to a row crop farmer, it's like silos. They're all pulled in different directions. Somebody's got to pull all that back together to make sure we listen and try to find out what they really need. One of the best things we can do for farmers to help them be first is to help them prosper. Right now, the majority of them are just surviving, right? And I think it's important for them to thrive in order for us to keep it that #1 industry in the state. The second thing that I think is a vision of mine is to keep our ag lands away from foreign adversaries. and away from overdevelopment. I'm not against development, but sometimes you see the pressure on those farming communities to especially the last 2 years, we've seen a decrease in acreage. And usually those farms were 50 acres to 100 acres, which is a perfect size for a subdivision. I mean, that's what that is. And once it goes to that, it never comes back to ag. It's gone. So I think we've got to find ways to make sure that that overdevelopment doesn't take up production. And I think the other piece of that, protecting our homeland, is from that foreign adversary. For example, China. China owns right now about 400,000 acres in the United States, or China's business owns about 400,000 acres in the United States. Do you know how many acres U.S. business owns of ag land in China?
None.
Zero. None. You can't. So if you're going to do business in China, you actually have to have a Chinese partner, and that partner has to be at least 51%. They don't have to put any money up. They don't have to help with the business. They just have to be that 51% plus owner. It's a very unfair, unbalanced situation, and I'm not picking on China, but that's a good example of we need to think through how do we best make sure that the land that we have that is producing food, because food is national security. Food security is national security. Go back to COVID and look at what happened. Everybody got very focused on what was closed, right? Because everything stopped. The distribution of food really kind of was upset. They were making food, like in the chicken business, we were making chicken. There was plenty of meat. It couldn't get to where it needed to go with the traditional distribution system. So I think, how do we make sure we keep our ag land our ag land? The third thing that I would tell you is I think we've got to be more conscious and more focused on how do we reduce our dependence on exports of food. And I mean them exporting to us. So the imports we see in the store. Now, the truth is we don't grow pineapples in South Carolina. So we're going to have to import pineapples. So it's not zero imports, but again, go back to COVID and look at how quickly things got tight and those shelves got empty. So I think we've got to find ways to make sure that we have our food security for our national security. I think the fourth piece, kind of the fourth leg of what I would want to do, is to make sure that the Consumer Protection Division, so we think about Department of Ag and you think about farmers, but you've just heard all these other things that really affect everybody in this room, gas pumps to restaurants to grocery stores. So I think we've got to make our Consumer Protection Division the best that it can be. And I want people to look at that letter on the front of that restaurant and know, all right, an A is an A, right? They can trust it, they can believe it. Because it is people's health, it's their welfare, it's their livelihood. Most restaurants, want to do a good job and they don't want anybody to get sick. But again, in today's age where things are moving fast, there's a lot of turnover. We can, as a department, really make a big difference in how we make sure those restaurants are doing the right thing. So those are really the kind of four things that I would kind of pick at and say we need to do. Now, my ask for you tonight, again, I'm very thankful to be able to come here and talk because I love preaching and teaching about agribusiness and agriculture and what the department does. But my ask for you would be, we're talking about a down ballot race. So we all know that the oxygen in the room is going to be sucked up by the governor's race, right? It's a big race, it's an important position, and you're going to see TV ads and billboards and blimps and everything else under the sun floating around. My race for Commissioner of Ag is the true down ballot race. Now what's that mean? That means that you have a big influence on who gets picked. Because there's no way to compete against the gubernatorial race. So it's a matter of telling people, hey, let me tell you about the Department of Ag. Let me tell you about what that department does. No, it's not just farming. It is farming. It's a very important part of it. There are all these other things that go into the department. And I met this guy named Fred. And he's passionate about what he wants to do. He believes he's called to do this, and he wants to do this because Fred has a debt to pay. My debt is to agriculture because it was just that good to me. I owe this industry something, one way, shape, or form. I think this is what I'm called to do, right? But I think I'm doing it for the reasons that it's just been that good to me and that good to my family. So you do have a big impact. I would tell you that the involvement here, there's one common thing that everybody has in this room, and they have it with Donald Trump, they have it with Elon Musk, they have it with Henry McMaster, and that is we all have 24 hours. No more, no less. I don't care how much money you have, you can't buy more. You've got 24 hours in a day. So thinking about how you invest those hours in a given day is pretty critical. I would tell you that your involvement in an organization like this is critical. Because if you go to Facebook, if you go to the TV, a lot of times you're not getting the best picture. You really do have an influence over the people around you. It's not just your vote, it's probably the 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 people y'all may talk to that you really make that influence on. So very, very thankful to be here. Thanks for the time. I'd be glad to answer some questions, a few questions if anybody's got any questions. Yes, ma'am.
You were talking about the chicken farms. Do they still put those antibiotics in those chickens and send them out to us to eat?
It's a great question. What you saw is the industry really changed where antibiotics were used. Now, they were animal antibiotics. But still, what the science began to say is, okay, people just need choices. And I'm a big choice guy. I like the free market. I like capitalism. I like people having choices. Some people don't care. They're okay with conventional chicken. What the industry really moved to was an option for NAE or no antibiotics ever, right? You really took the antibiotics out of the process. So most of your chicken you see now, it's got to be labeled that way. So you'll see it on the label. It doesn't say no antibiotics or NAE. That means it's conventional, which means right now it's really not, again, people antibiotics, it's animal antibiotics. And you got to remember, within chicken, you're only using antibiotics when the bird is sick. They don't give it because it's costly. And you cannot legally use it at the end of the bird's life. Because then you get ready to kill it. So what you do is pumping antibiotics into it. All chicken plants in the United States are fully integrated, which means we controlled all the way back before the egg. We brought chicks in that were going to grow to sexual maturity to make eggs. We took those eggs to our hatchery. 21 days, those eggs were hatched. We took those chicks out to our growers, independent growers, farmers, who usually had a complete farming operation, and they were adding a chicken piece to it because it was so consistent for their profit or their margins of what they were doing. So you send them out to those growers, very much controlled. We controlled the feed. We had our own vets. Everything was very, very, very controlled. And then the process of birth, again, this is true for every chicken plant in the United States. China's a completely different story, but here, before the birds are brought to the plant, usually the week before, they'll go do samples of blood test samples of birds to look for everything from heavy metals, pesticides, whatever, and even antibiotics. And even if a bird got antibiotics early in their life, you usually don't see it at the end of the bird. So to your point about what's the difference or what is it about, there's a product line out there called NAE, and most chicken companies are offering it now. You still have to have conventional because what do you do with the bird that gets sick? When I say sick, most birds, it's usually like a cold. And the problem with the cold is when you have a cold, you usually don't want to eat. And birds, you basically get your money based off of meat that they're kind of growing. So that's why they use those for conventional kind of process. Does that make sense?
Well, I see that Walmart has some off-brand names that I'm not familiar with. They did have Purdue no antibiotics, but I can't find that in Walmart. They may have it now, but I haven't been able to find it. They may have it at Food Iron, but you see more name brands that we're not familiar with, and you don't know where these chickens are coming from.
So every chicken product has a seal on it with a P number, a plant number. And you can look on that number or on that seal, get the number of that plant, and go type into USDA FSIS and see where that plant is, see who it came from. It's a very controlled process. Like when I went to China, let me tell you something, you don't ever want your chicken coming from China. I've seen their operations.
We don't know that it's not.
It's illegal. It doesn't come here. Raw chicken does not come into the United States. I can tell you that right now. And that's beautiful because, again, it is so easy to go over there and see how they do not have the fully integrated system. So one person grows a bird, one person feeds the birds, one plant does this, one plant does that. So it's just kind of willy-nilly. Where here in the States, Tyson is going to own that bird all the way back before an egg. Purdue is going to own that bird all the way back before the egg and all the way through the process. So it's very, very much controlled, which is good for your food.
That sounds good.
Now, I would ask you this, do you buy the hormone-free, steroid-free chicken?
Well, I really don't buy that much chicken, but I always look at what I do buy, steroid-free and organic as much as I can.
So, a little fun fact here, all chicken is hormone-free, steroid-free. Since the 60s, it's been illegal to use steroids or hormone in chicken. Number one, it didn't work, right? And then the government went away from it. So you'll see some packages that say hormone-free, steroid-free. That was a marketing guy.
Yeah,
They
they were
decided to
growing them.
stick it on the package to make it look better when there's usually a little asterisk beside that statement because they have to follow it up with, yeah, all chicken is hormone-free steroids.
They grow them so fast.
That makes everybody think that they're.
27 days, is that
Or
what it
a
was?
size, sometimes, like we grew at Amy Farms, we grew almost a 10-pound bird. And people would say, you have to be using hormones and steroids. You have to be. And I tell them this, when you breed a Chihuahua with a Chihuahua, what do you get? When you breed a Great Dane with a Great Dane, what do you get? So it's selective breeding at its finest. So you're growing birds, when we go back to buy those chicks that are gonna make the eggs, that company is basically breeding birds to birds, learning the traits of what works and what doesn't work. So some companies like us want a bigger bird. Your fast food plants, right, are gonna have a smaller bird, because they're selling, the fast food companies are selling by piece, not by pound. So our meat got used in everything from Campbell's soup to chicken pot pies, you name it. It was in a lot of different things because it was bigger and more economical. Even though some of that big meat is showing up in the retail grocery stores now for just the economic side, it's a good purchase. So I want to encourage you that our food system in the United States, we still got things we can get better at, no doubt about it. Compared to the places I've been in the world, and that's been from China to South America to Central America, even over to Europe, I think our system is one of the best, safest systems in the world, honestly. So, any other questions? Yes, sir.
So you talked about how you have foreign investors coming in and buying up land and so forth. Now, what's to stop companies from going into older farmers, because there's not a lot of young farmers coming in, and pressuring them to sell off just for solar farms? Now, I know, and most people don't, is that the lifetime of one solar panel is not going to generate enough electricity to justify its cost. But you go right on the way up to North Carolina to Laurinburg, you got two huge solar farms that are not even covering their own costs. What's to prevent companies from coming and buying up that land, putting a solar farm which has a government subsidy behind it, and then once it's done, develop it out?
It's a great question. And I think it goes back to that first point of how do we make sure South Carolina farmers are first? The best way to prevent against somebody selling out is that they're prospering. Most farmers they're the most amazing people you ever meet. They're very dedicated. They're taking a huge risk because how do you control the weather? How do you control markets? I mean, you really are sticking your neck out. Most of them love it and they want to do it. It's just that financial pressure of, I can't do this anymore, right? So I think my first answer would be, I think we make sure that people can make a living. You look at the next generation, there's less and less kids coming back to the farm. And why is that? Because they get a job making $60 grand a year, insurance, holiday pay, 401k, and weekends off. And they see their parents struggle 365 days out of the year. So again, a lot of those kids do want to come back, but how do you handle two households with the smaller margins they have? So I think we've got to find ways to make sure they can prosper. You know, the solar, honestly, that's one of the top 4 questions that I get asked as I go around the state. What about solar farms? What about solar farms? Now, I am a guy, again, I believe in capitalism. I believe in market choices. I want somebody, if they really want to do solar farming, hey, have at it. What I don't want to do is to have a farmer who's already just barely getting by, feeling pressure, or desperate, let's just say desperate, to have some other stream of income coming in to just barely make it.
Right.
And I think sometimes you see that. You see farmers going, well, I got to do this. Now, the math of it, how it works and doesn't work, you know, those panels do have a lifetime.
Right.
At the end of that lifetime, you got to do something with it.
You're using precious metals, silver to be specific, for these solar panels. They destroy the environment that they're around. Like, to me, I done the research, I see it's a lose-lose situation. But as you said, when you got, Grandpa over there who's put 35 years of his life on the farm, broke his back, he's struggling trying to do everything, that 50 acres is 50 acres.
Yep. Prosperity solves a lot of problems. We all know that. When you have a little extra money, boy, it changes what you can do, who you can help, what you invest in, what you don't invest in.
But until the government gets out of supplementing the land purchase and the land rent, you're going to have solar farms. When I'm telling you that I can lease a farm to you, a 50-acre farm, for $750 a year per acre on 50 acres, do the math. for 25 years. Now,
No brainer.
that's what I'm saying. You want to know why it's there? It's because our government and our bureaucracy has made it so that it's a catch-22.
Yep.
I mean, just like you said, it's not profitable for anybody but the farmer.
Yep.
I mean, when you put them up, the people who put them up make money. The people who sign the contracts make money. Other than that, I mean, with gas going down, oil futures going down, we've got more natural gas in this country we're ever going to use. But until we get off our butt and get rid of these bureaucrats and these, it's like trying to get rid of the Department of Education. You want to teach kids to read and write? Quit offering gender studies.
Right. It's back to basics, and I think about Amy Farms. We looked at solar through the years because we had larger companies like the big name brand companies that like that. And this is back in other administrations, so the green stuff was a lot cooler in their eyes. And we looked at doing it at the plant. We actually looked at doing it at the actual chicken houses, thinking, all right, well, this could be an addition and kind of help them with power. Once you get to the end of that life, the math is different. You have to replace everything. And it just didn't work for us. We just decided not to do it. But I do think it goes back to, again, how do we help farmers flourish in a real marketplace to do their job and do it well, and then be able to keep what they want to keep doing. Again, most farmers, that's what they were born to do. So, any other questions?
Another thing hurts farming too, and particularly down around the beach area, Horry County is the fastest growing county in the United States. So much of farmland is going into housing development and stuff. And I saw an interview yesterday, Keith Moreland Farm outside Charlotte. They were a century farm. I don't know how many, several hundred acres, I think, in the farm. And after being a century of his parents and grandparents being farming, they finally sold out to what's going to be a tremendous housing apartment complex right outside Charlotte. And it showed his farm. It was 100+ dairy cow farmer, and it just every year things were just so working against him that it finally got to the point that his net worth was just going down every week that they stayed on the farm. So he finally bit the bullet. But in Horry County, though, a lot of that prime farmland, I know that my wife works at the cotton. Some of the best cotton we brought into Bennettsville over the last few years that came right out of Horry County. Most people think about the beach at Horry County, but there's 2 or 3 farmers down there that they've been making 2 bales an acre of cotton, and a lot of that land down at the beach is going into these big complexes.
Yep. And that goes back to when you've got a farmer who's already stressed, I'm just barely surviving, and somebody walks in and wants to offer 5 times of what their acreage is worth. I mean, I don't blame them. But again, how do we change that? I think we change that by helping them prosper. You're still going to have some sell. Now, what I would love to see versus that is I would love to see, and this is something there's some programs out there that try to do this, to try to create opportunities for somebody like me that was not born into the ag community, was not born into a farming family, but they want to get into it. Well, the entry cost of that is huge if you're just going out and starting it up. But and there's some farmers out there who do this. A program with Southtown Farm Bureau, and I've worked with them for 20 years. They're just wonderful, wonderful folks. They have it's almost like a bulletin board of farmers who are saying, I'm going to get out, and I'm looking for somebody to kind of bring into the mix, kind of work with me a little bit, maybe move into a lease, and then maybe move into a purchase. So it creates this flow back to it. So that farmland, if you don't want to do it anymore, you don't say your kids are gone and they're just not coming back and you just don't want to do it anymore. I want to find ways that we can make it to where somebody who does want to do it can at least connect with that person and figure out if there's somebody to do it. Because once it goes to development, it does not come back to ag. It just doesn't. Again, I'm not against development. I think some of the stuff we're seeing is just, and again, we're the #1 or #2, #3 state in the nation for people relocating here. That's wonderful. It shows what we are and what we have. But if you look at the pressures that it's doing on the infrastructure for that, pretty huge. And farming can kind of get pushed to the side pretty easily. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Not a question, but I grew up in a farm family. My dad farmed for 50-some-odd years here. His health declined to the point that he could no longer farm, and he rented out the land. You don't make any money renting the land. I'll be honest with you. I carried on that philosophy of renting the land up until about 6 years ago. We had about 500 acres of farmland that we leased out to a farmer. row crops and what have you. The pressures on people that own farmland to sell it are great. I really never had any intention of selling the farmland because most of it was been in my family over 100 years. But my two sisters, neither one of them live around here. Three of us owned it. A gentleman, a friend of mine, came to me one day and he had a manila folder and handed it to me. He said, "Jim," says, "I don't want this to affect our friendship one iota. I don't have a dog in this fight, but please take a look at it." And it was a proposal from his sister to buy one of the parcels of land which adjoined my friend's. And it was a lucrative proposal. I thought it was, I knew what farmland in Marlboro County is anywhere from $2,500 to $3,000 an acre. And this one was above that. Yeah. And I called, I'm just one of three votes, called my sisters, and like I said, none of my children live here other than my handicapped son that lives with us. And my two sisters, one in Irmo and one in Leland, North Carolina. I said, "Look, this is what I have."
Jim, are they farming? Is this new person farming?
No, they're not leasing it out. The same person's farming it.
He's still farming.
Matt Ayers is farming the land, and that's who was farming it for me when we owned it. But I posed it to my two sisters, and they said, "We're never going back there."
Yeah.
And so,
And
They
again,
both voted.
the question is what happens to it after? If
Yeah,
it's a
yeah.
development, it never comes
Yeah.
back to ag. If it's still getting used for ag, we at least have a shot.
Yeah.
If we can help them prosper, maybe they'll keep doing that at least.
well, when I sold it, I asked when the woman lives in Virginia, and I asked her. I said, "If I sell this land to you, what are you going to do with it?" She said, "I don't know. It's an investment right now." They had sold some farm property up in Virginia, and they needed to roll that money over into farmland. So one of the stipulations that I made her agree to, I said, "Look, the guy that's farming the land is actually a relative of mine, and he's a young man who works a full-time job, and he farms full-time. I mean, the guy lives right on the Hamlet Highway." And I asked her, I said, "Now, you're going to want somebody to work this land. You don't want it to sit idle." She said, "Of course, I want to find." I said, "Well, this is the guy that needs to farm land."
good.
And I made them agree right there in writing that they would let him farm the land. And I would have gone back to my sisters if they had not agreed that and said, "Look, we don't want to sell it to this person."
Any other
The
questions?
good thing about him, he has two young kids.
Oh, yeah.
And they're out on the tractor farming
Oh, yeah.
and
Oh, yeah.
doing whatever.
They're catching the bug is what they're
Yeah,
catching, right? That's where you want them to be able to come back to that farm because it's prospering, right? That it can handle the next generation.
Well, Matt, his grandmother was my first cousin, and Louise's son Duncan farmed the land. Matter of fact, after my dad passed away, farmed it for years and years and years, and thank God for that. The rent was there on the 1st of January. It was a no-brainer. But these young people that are living on the farms today, a diminishing number.
Yep.
And she's right about Matt's two kids. He's got a boy and a girl, and they're out there on tractors every day.
Any other questions?
I think it's about 7:30. You got a question?
I'll hang out. I'll stay here afterwards till the last person leaves. If you got some questions, I'm not in a rush. I'll be glad to answer what I can. Please remember, I'm Fred West. I'm running for Commissioner of Agriculture. I would love your vote. I would cover your vote. I would pray for your vote. But bigger than that, let's talk a little bit about Department of Ag and what it does. Make sure people know what it does because it really carries a lot of weight in the state. And continue to do what you're doing. This is important. It's important work. It's God's work. So I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Let's give him a hand.
Thank you, Fred. Appreciate it. Like I said, we're getting late in the hour, and everybody needs to get on back home. But, we appreciate Fred for coming here tonight and speaking to us. Unfortunately, tonight you're missing some of the farmers that are usually here. I'm sure they're on combines cutting soybeans this afternoon. But anyway, it's just the way things work out. But unless anybody has any other thing that like to say?
I'll just say one thing. Last night, I was on a conference call with Joe Gruters. He's the new RNC chief, chairman, that was elected about a month ago. And the call was, he's going to start doing these about once a month. And the gist of it, he had President Trump's statistician on there talking about the numbers around the different elections across the country. And of course, coming up here in November, the biggest two elections in the country are in New Jersey and Virginia. And they are amazed at the numbers they're looking at as far as plus side for the Republicans in an off year. So that's going to be very important. If you got any relatives or friends in Virginia, of course, Lieutenant Governor in Virginia is running. I met her last summer, a very nice lady. She came here from, I think, the Bahamas when she was 6 years old, and has made her life in Virginia with her parents. But anyway, she's running for governor, and then there's a couple other races. But the big two states as far as elections is New Jersey, and the numbers that those statisticians are pulling up are very positive, and that equates into what's going to be good for Fred and everybody else that runs all over the country. Next year, the 2026 elections could be a huge election for the Republican Party in an off year, midterm election, which we need to keep the House and Senate in Washington, because if we don't, President Trump's dead in the water for trying to get anything done. Anyway, I appreciate everybody coming. Sorry, I had a little issue today with AFib, still got it, and I'm just been battling that all day, and it's still hanging on. As the old saying goes, I got to go back to the doctor in Pinehurst tomorrow. So
I keep telling it's time for him to retire.
Yeah.
Oh, hell no.
But anyway, thank you for all for
Appreciate
coming
everybody
tonight.
coming.
And talk to your neighbors, get your neighbors, I can get out and vote. Actually, I voted today in a city election for a city council member. I'm sure the turnout's going to be extremely light in Bennettville. If you live in Bennettville,
Do you know what?
go out and vote.
Jim.
I sell agriculture supplies. I don't know a lot of things.